You wake up, check your phone, scroll for a few minutes, and already feel like you've lost momentum. It's not fatigue. It's not sleep deprivation. It's energy inflation. The silent tax your brain pays every day without your awareness. You're not exhausted because of what you do. You're exhausted because of what your brain keeps doing when you're not paying attention. The hidden energy leak isn't physical effort, it's cognitive friction. Every open loop in your mind, unfinished decisions, silent doubts, imaginary arguments, background worries, burns neural fuel. You might think doing nothing saves energy, but in neuroscience, idling is the most expensive state. When you sit still, your brain doesn't rest. It activates what's called the default mode network, the same neural system that processes self-talk, unresolved emotions, and mental simulations. It's like leaving 50 browser tabs open in your head. Even if you're not actively thinking, those processes are still running, consuming glucose and oxygen as if you were working. That's why you can spend an entire day resting and still feel depleted. Your mind has been burning energy on background tasks you never closed. The result is cognitive inflation. The same way money loses value when too much of it is circulating without purpose, your attention loses power when it's constantly scattered across meaningless processes. The solution isn't more rest, it's energetic efficiency, cutting wasteful loops that your brain keeps financing in secret. Let's break this down into a simple equation. Total energy equals productive effort plus background leakage. Most people focus only on optimizing effort, how to push harder, stay focused longer, or motivate themselves better. But the real leverage lies in cutting leakage. Every watt of mental power you reclaim from noise can be reinvested into clarity, performance, and execution. The first step is identifying where the leaks are happening. There are 3 categories of energy inflation: decision friction, emotional loops, and predictive overdrive. Let's start with decision friction. Each unresolved choice, no matter how small, sits in your prefrontal cortex like a parked process. What to reply to that message, whether to accept that meeting, even tiny things like which outfit to wear. These micro decisions each cost a small dose of mental glucose. The problem is, your brain doesn't differentiate between small and big. It just counts open loops. By midday, you've spent half your energy budget not on execution, but on invisible preloading, thinking about thinking. The fix is what I call the one-pass rule. Whenever a small decision enters your awareness, process it once, not twice. Either act, schedule, or discard. Don't let it hover in cognitive limbo. This technique alone can reduce decision fatigue by up to 40%. You're not meant to hold micro-decisions in your working memory. You're meant to resolve them and release that bandwidth. The second form of energy inflation is emotional loops. Every time you replay a conversation, doubt your last action, or preempt someone's judgment, you activate your limbic system. That's your brain's emotional core, designed for survival, not reflection. It floods your body with cortisol and keeps neural circuits active long after the event is gone. Emotional replay feels like reflection, but it's actually a waste loop, a mental treadmill where energy goes in but no progress comes out. The antidote is pattern interruption. The moment you notice a replay starting, label it as mental noise, then trigger a grounding action, a slow exhale or physical movement. This redirects energy from the limbic system back to the prefrontal cortex, restoring cognitive control. Think of it as closing a background app that's secretly draining your battery. The third and most subtle source of energy inflation is predictive overdrive. Your brain is a prediction engine. It constantly simulates what might happen next so you can prepare for it. But when you live in constant uncertainty, this system goes into overclocking mode. You start forecasting every possible outcome, conversation, or risk. The irony is that these simulations feel productive, but they're pure expenditure. They consume the same energy as real action but produce nothing tangible. High performers understand this instinctively. They train their brain to operate in one of 2 states, execution or recovery. There's no third state called mental rehearsal of anxiety. To stop predictive overdrive, install what I call the micro-boundary protocol. The moment you catch yourself simulating a scenario you can't control, redirect your attention to a single sensory anchor, sound, breath, or touch, and say the phrase, "not actionable, not now." It tells the prefrontal cortex to stop allocating energy to that file. Over time, this rewires the anterior cingulate cortex, reducing automatic rumination and saving massive cognitive fuel. When you remove these 3 leaks, decision friction, emotional loops, and predictive overdrive, you stop the inflation cycle. You'll feel an almost unnatural calm, because for the first time, your brain isn't financing unnecessary mental processes. But here's where most people sabotage themselves. They mistake stillness for emptiness and rush to fill it again. The human brain has a bias towards stimulation. If it's not solving something, it feels idle, and idle feels wrong. To counter this, you must retrain your dopamine system. Dopamine isn't just the molecule of pleasure, it's the molecule of pursuit. It rewards movement toward goals, not rest. But when you constantly chase micro-rewards, checking messages, scrolling feeds, scanning notifications, you teach your brain that attention equals reward. When you try to stop, it rebels. This is why energy inflation persists even in silence. You're withdrawing from micro-stimulation. The fix is deliberate boredom exposure. For 5 minutes a day, do absolutely nothing. No phone, no conversation, no input. The goal isn't relaxation, it's recalibration. You're teaching your dopamine system to decouple attention from external triggers. Within a week, you'll notice that background noise in your mind quiets faster. Within 2, your baseline focus stabilizes. And within a month, you start feeling rested even during work. Your brain has stopped leaking energy into empty stimulation. Let's talk about what actually happens neurologically. The prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for planning and decision-making, has a limited energy budget. Every time you switch tasks, worry, or replay scenarios, neurons in this region burn adenosine triphosphate, the brain's fuel molecule. Once depleted, focus collapses, impulse control weakens, and fatigue sets in. Most people think caffeine or motivation can override this, but they can't. You can't push through metabolic debt. The only solution is optimization, using your cognitive energy with surgical precision. The simplest way to measure inflation is to track your cognitive clarity after rest. If you wake up tired or mentally foggy even after good sleep, your brain didn't rest. It spent the night processing unresolved loops. Before bed, run a mental closure ritual. Write down every unfinished thought, decision, or worry. Don't solve them, just externalize them. The act of writing signals the hippocampus that the information is stored externally, allowing the brain to shut down processing. This single action can increase next-day energy by up to 20%. Think of it as deflation, reducing the volume of mental currency in circulation so each unit of focus regains value. Now that you understand how these invisible leaks drain your power, let's turn that insight into a protocol you can actually install. Think of your brain as an economy. Every task, thought, or worry is a transaction. Some investments generate returns, creative ideas, strategic work, deliberate rest. Others are inflationary. They consume energy but produce no value. Most people never audit this system, and as a result, their attention becomes worthless currency. To reclaim it, you need an attention budget. The goal isn't to do less, it's to spend energy where it compounds. Step 1 is awareness through audit. For one day, observe how your brain spends energy when you're not doing anything. You'll notice microtransactions, tiny moments of self-talk, second-guessing, or mental simulation. Each one feels harmless, but collectively they create chronic depletion. To capture them, do a mental inventory every few hours. Ask one question: where is my energy going right now? The simple act of noticing redirects neural activation from the automatic networks to the conscious control centers of your brain, reducing waste in real time. This is cognitive deflation in action. The moment awareness enters, unnecessary loops collapse. Step 2 is called closure conversion. Every unfinished thought or decision behaves like a low-grade open debt. The brain doesn't know the difference between a major life choice and a minor unreturned message. It just flags both as pending. The key is to move every open loop from mental storage into external storage. Use what neuroscientists call external cognition, writing, voice notes, or digital capture. When you offload, your hippocampus releases the need to rehearse that data. The mental command is simple: decide, delegate, or document. Once you do, the loop is closed and your system stops paying interest on it. Step 3. Establish a recovery tax. Here's the paradox. Your brain doesn't rest by stopping, it rests by switching. The most efficient way to recover cognitive fuel is not to do nothing, but to change mental contexts. That's why athletes recover faster between training blocks than knowledge workers do between meetings. They alternate intensity with full disengagement. You can replicate this through what's called contrast recovery. Every 90 minutes of cognitive work, spend 5 to 10 minutes in full sensory grounding, step outside, move your eyes across distant objects, feel physical space. These sensory shifts activate the dorsal attention network and suppress the default mode network, clearing mental residue. That single act can reset neural efficiency faster than an hour of idle scrolling. Step 4 is what I call the zero backlog window. Most people accumulate micro-decisions that pile up through the day and spill into the evening. By night, your brain is running an invisible operating system update, processing the day's unresolved inputs. That's why you wake up tired. The zero backlog window fixes this by introducing a 10-minute deflation ritual before you shut down work. Write down any task, idea, or concern that surfaced during the day, no matter how small. Then ask one question: does this require energy tomorrow, or can it expire tonight? When you consciously expire non-essential thoughts, your brain releases its predictive tension and transitions into deep rest. Over time, this restores natural dopamine sensitivity, the neurological foundation of sustained motivation. Step 5. The silence protocol. Modern humans live in constant cognitive inflation because they never let their attention return to baseline. Continuous low-level stimulation, music, podcasts, scrolling, creates perpetual micro-engagement, forcing your neurons to maintain readiness mode. You're spending energy even in rest. The silence protocol is not about meditation. It's about returning the brain to equilibrium. For 5 minutes a day, remove all input and simply observe sensory silence. No devices, no movement, no goal. At first, your mind will panic. It will search for stimulation because it has associated silence with loss of value. Stay in it. Within 60 seconds, the prefrontal cortex begins downregulating and energy starts compounding again. This is the neurological equivalent of tightening the money supply. You're restoring scarcity, which increases value. By implementing these 5 steps, awareness, closure, recovery, backlog deflation, and silence, you trigger what neuroscientists call energetic coherence. This is the state where your brain stops leaking power into redundant processes. You'll notice something unusual. Focus becomes easier, decisions feel lighter, and fatigue arrives later in the day, if at all. You're no longer inflating your mental currency, you're investing it strategically. Let's go deeper into why this works. Your brain runs on prediction error minimization. Every thought you have is the brain trying to reduce uncertainty about the future. That predictive mechanism is efficient only when it has a clear target. When it doesn't, when you're multitasking, worrying, or looping, it creates energy inflation by constantly updating useless forecasts. You're paying biological interest on imagined futures. The cure is precision targeting. Every time you start a task or conversation, mentally name its objective in one sentence. This tells your brain's reticular activating system what to prioritize. Suddenly, irrelevant predictions drop. The energetic savings are massive. Over time, this mental labeling becomes automatic. You start thinking only in executable units, not in vague abstractions. The result is a measurable boost in cognitive endurance. Another overlooked factor behind energy inflation is hidden social processing. Every interaction triggers micro-calculations: how you're being perceived, what others meant, whether you said the right thing. Your social brain is a high-energy consumer designed for survival in tribes. But in modern environments, it's chronically overactive. To cut this leak, you must apply what's known as perception distancing. Whenever you feel self-conscious or replay social interactions, zoom out and describe the event in third person. For example, that person presented their idea and it landed neutrally. This linguistic distancing shifts brain activity from emotional to analytical regions, instantly reducing limbic activation. You can recover up to 15% of your energy just by practicing this mental reframe. At this stage, your brain is no longer hemorrhaging energy into loops, but there's one final optimization: the energy reinvestment phase. Once you stop inflation, you need to direct the surplus somewhere meaningful, or the system will reinflate itself. The brain hates idle energy. It will always find a place to spend it. You must predefine high-value outlets, deep work, physical training, or creative problem-solving. When your energy rises, redirect it consciously. This creates what's called a positive metabolic feedback loop. More energy fuels more execution, which produces progress, which releases dopamine, which motivates further focus. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. The truth is, most people never experience this because they never get past the noise stage. Their brains are perpetually taxed by invisible costs, so even motivation feels like debt. But when you eliminate those costs, performance feels effortless. You don't need to push yourself, you just stop leaking. The result is what I call energetic sovereignty, the ability to decide where every unit of your focus goes and how much return it generates. It's the difference between running on fumes and running on flow. This is not time management, it's neuroeconomics. Time is equal for everyone, but energy isn't. The person who manages their brain's energy supply wins, regardless of skill or intelligence. Every elite performer, from athletes to founders, has mastered this principle, whether consciously or not. They understand that control of attention is control of power. When your brain stops financing wasteful processes, every thought becomes sharper, every decision cleaner, every hour more valuable. That's the invisible advantage you can install right now. Here's where it all connects. The root cause of your exhaustion is not work, it's friction. The brain's energy economy collapses when friction outweighs flow. Friction comes from internal conflict, wanting one thing while doing another, holding competing thoughts, or forcing productivity while your system is overloaded. Each of these contradictions burns through energy reserves because the brain is trying to process multiple incompatible goals simultaneously. Neuroscience calls this cognitive dissonance, but in performance terms, it's energy inflation in its purest form. To eliminate this drain, you need internal congruence, the alignment between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. When those three systems sync, neural efficiency skyrockets. The brain stops wasting glucose on constant correction loops. You shift from friction to flow. The protocol to install this alignment has 3 phases: reset, recalibrate, and reinforce. Phase 1 reset starts with a simple but powerful move: neutralize cognitive noise. Noise is any mental signal that's unverified or unresolved. You remove it by labeling. When a doubt or what if appears, name it directly. That's uncertainty. This activates your prefrontal cortex, suppressing the emotional overreaction generated by the amygdala. Labeling reclaims control because it converts abstract emotion into explicit information. The brain can't regulate what it doesn't label. After labeling, breathe once through the nose and out through the mouth while lowering your shoulders. This tiny physical cue tells your vagus nerve to initiate parasympathetic calm. You're clearing the static, freeing neural bandwidth. Phase 2, recalibrate, is where you reassign your attention budget. You take stock of the 3 biggest energy leaks that dominate your day. First, unfinished micro-decisions, texts left unanswered, small plans left vague. Second, unresolved emotional narratives, conversations you keep rehearsing but never close. Third, hypothetical simulations, scenarios that never happened but feel real because your brain doesn't distinguish imagination from experience. Once identified, you convert them into 2 categories: actionable and expired. Actionable means it deserves a decision or movement. Expired means it no longer serves a purpose. You either schedule the actionable or discard the expired. The act of categorizing converts chaos into structure. The moment you do this, the anterior cingulate cortex, the brain's error detection system, quiets down. You've just deflated one of the biggest energy costs: mental ambiguity. Phase 3, reinforce, installs a maintenance loop. Every night before you close your day, you run a 90-second neural reconciliation. You ask 3 questions. What loop did I close today? What loop still drains me? And what can I externalize so it stops cycling? This transforms self-reflection from therapy into neuro-efficiency training. It tells your brain that uncertainty is temporary, not permanent, so it stops allocating fuel to rehearse unsolved problems. Within a week of applying this, you'll notice fatigue shrinking. Your baseline clarity increases because your brain is finally working in single-thread mode, not multi-thread chaos. There's a second dimension to this protocol: emotional load management. Emotional processing is the most energy-intensive operation the human brain performs. When you suppress emotions, you don't save energy, you spend more. Suppression forces the limbic system to run monitoring loops, checking whether that emotion might resurface. That's why avoidance is more exhausting than confrontation. The energy-efficient alternative is emotional resolution through physical feedback. The next time you feel tension, don't analyze it, physiologically discharge it. Stand, stretch, breathe deeply through the diaphragm, and exhale longer than you inhale. The long exhale triggers the baroreceptor reflex, calming your heart rate and signaling completion. Emotion is just energy that needs closure. Once released, the cognitive system shuts the loop and reclaims power. You've stopped the inflation of internal charge. From here, we move into the advanced layer of the code: predictive simplification. Earlier, we discussed how the brain constantly forecasts the future to reduce uncertainty. This forecasting runs on data, your routines, habits, and environment. The more unpredictable your surroundings, the more the brain burns fuel to anticipate. Predictive simplification means reducing the entropy of your environment, so the brain spends less on forecasting and more on execution. Practical example: keep your workspace visually minimal. Every visible object is a micro-stimulus the visual cortex must process, and each object subtly drains focus. Second, standardize repeated actions. Wake time, meal times, starting rituals. Predictability is not rigidity, it's efficiency. Each repeated cue becomes an automation that saves glucose. The world's top performers are not more disciplined, they're more automated. Their systems remove unnecessary prediction cycles. You can do the same. Install consistent environmental anchors, specific music, scent, or lighting that marks focus mode. Your brain will associate those sensory cues with a specific state of performance, and with repetition, the state becomes automatic. No willpower needed, zero friction applied. Now let's address the invisible killer of cognitive energy, identity friction. This happens when your self-image and behavior operate on different frequencies. For example, you see yourself as strategic but spend your time reacting. You think of yourself as disciplined but allow interruptions to control your schedule. Each mismatch creates a micro-conflict that drains dopamine and motivation. The solution is alignment through identity congruence. Start by defining your operating identity in one sentence. I am the type of person who does X consistently. Keep it simple, measurable, and action-based. Every time you act in accordance with that identity, dopamine reinforces it, making it easier to repeat. Over time, energy inflation drops because your behavior and identity stop fighting for dominance. You become predictable to yourself, and that predictability creates trust. The final layer of the energy deflation system is called neural prioritization. Here's the paradox. Your brain doesn't run out of energy because of hard work. It runs out because of divided attention. The average person switches tasks hundreds of times a day, fragmenting focus into pieces too small to create momentum. The energy leak isn't from doing too much. It's from never doing one thing long enough for efficiency to compound. To fix this, use the single-channel rule. At any moment, only one cognitive channel is active. If you're working, fully work. If you're resting, fully rest. Don't blend. Multitasking doubles energy consumption because your brain has to reinitialize context every time you switch. That's why you feel more tired after a day of half-focus than after hours of deep work. True high performance is energy allocation, not time allocation. So, combine everything you've learned into the energy deflation protocol. Audit daily loops to detect leaks. Label and close cognitive noise. Simplify prediction by stabilizing routines. Align behavior with identity. Operate through single-channel focus. This framework doesn't require more effort. It reclaims the energy you already have but have been spending inefficiently. Within 2 weeks, you'll feel the compounding effect. Less mental noise, more mental output. You'll start each day with the clarity of someone who has doubled their cognitive budget. And that's the real competitive advantage, not working harder but thinking cleaner. Because the truth is, productivity isn't about doing more. It's about removing what makes you tired before you even begin. The brain rewards efficiency with focus, creativity, and motivation. That's your signal that the code is installed. If this gave you an edge today, subscribe to Success Code now and keep expanding your arsenal of performance protocols. Every week, we decode another hidden mechanism of the brain and turn it into a practical system you can install instantly. Because success isn't luck, it's architecture. And once you understand how to deflate the energy inflation inside your own mind, you stop surviving the day and start engineering it.